This video is for middle schoolers all across America right now, starting up at school again. If you're in a band program, you're probably testing out all the different instruments right now and deciding what you want to play. This video is for anybody that is interested in playing French horn, or maybe even considering it and wondering if it's a good fit for you or not. In this video, we're going to talk about pros and cons of the instruments, tips if you do pick it that are going to help you be more successful, and really just hopefully help you figure out if it's going to be a good fit for you as a person. It's a little different than what I normally do. I know not everybody is going to watch this video, but I believe this is something that's not talked about a lot outside of the classroom, and YouTube is a great platform for it. So hopefully my 2 cents on this will help you make an informed decision and you enjoy what you end up playing. So I have some notes here that I wrote down so that I don't miss any points that I've thought about for this. I want to start by saying that every instrument that you're going to try out in band has its pros and cons. There is no one superior instrument that is better than everything else, and there is no one instrument that is worse than everything else, you know what I mean? As much as people want to argue otherwise, that is just not the case. As much as I love horn, I am not going to sit here in this video and tell you horn is better than everything else, because it's not. It's beautiful, I love it, but that doesn't mean it's for everybody. Every instrument has its pros and cons, and every instrument can be beautiful. And as you're exposed to more and more music, you'll hear instruments being used in ways that you probably have never imagined before. The two most important things when it comes to picking an instrument, to keep it brief, is that A, you like it. Make sure that you actually like what you have and you're not just being thrown into some situation where you're being made to play something. Because then the other most important thing is that you will work hard at it in practice. And obviously you'll want to practice something you like versus something that you're just thrown into. So with those two things in mind, let's talk a little bit more about horns specifically. I'll go ahead and start with the cons just because I like to end on a happy note and we'll get the cons out of the way. My first con written down is that it is a hard instrument to play. Now, as a bit of a disclaimer to kind of protect myself in a way, every instrument is hard to play. But what I mean by this con is horn is maybe considered the hardest to play. I think it's one of the hardest to start out on, and that is because horn is the most difficult instrument to play accurately. This is something that I think most musicians would agree on. This isn't like math class where 2 + 2 is 4 and that's the answer and it will always be the answer. A lot of things in music are subjective and can be argued, but the reason I argue and why I think a lot of band directors say that horn is the hardest to play is because on brass instruments, because we don't have a lot of buttons. If you play a brass instrument, French horn, trumpet, trombone, tuba, euphonium are the main ones. And they all tend to have 3 to 4 valves or buttons, but they're called valves. And obviously a trumpet player can play more than like 8 or 9 notes. And they do that by aiming at different targets. So even if they, let's say, hold down this one button, that's not one note, they can actually get handfuls of notes out of that. And they do that by aiming for low notes versus middle notes versus high notes. And there's normally a handful of different targets per like button combination that you can press down. On most brass instruments, let's say the targets are like this big and they're a fair distance apart. On horn, you just have to be much more careful because instead of them being this big, they're maybe like this big. And they're right next to each other. So if you don't hit this small target already, you'll hit the one right next to it and different notes will come out than what you want. Hopefully that makes sense. I always invite people, if I ever say something that doesn't make sense or if they have any questions, you can contact me personally or in the comments and I'm happy to help out. But that is a very brief and plain description of how brass instruments work. I would say that horn is not for the person who's going into band for the easy A. I mean, let's be real, really band just isn't the class for you to go into if you want an easy A. That's just, sorry. If you're one of those people right now, you might want to talk to your band director or, I don't know, you need to figure something out because band does take a lot of work. But having said that, I do not want to scare people away from horn. That does not make it impossible. You just should keep that in mind. So my next point, okay, this kind of goes along with it being hard to play. There tends to be a bit of a larger learning curve. Maybe like a month or 2 into school, a lot of beginners on horn tend to get discouraged. I'll see this in band students, but the horn players in particular will seem more down on themselves This doesn't always happen, but I also don't want to say it's uncommon that it happens. Don't get discouraged if you end up picking horn and you feel this way like a month or two into playing. This is just because of, again, how the instrument is built. In a lot of band programs, for example, the horns will be sitting next to the saxophones. You can be sitting wherever your director wants you. But oftentimes, it's the saxophones, and saxophone, just so you know, is one of the easier instruments to start out on. I'm not saying saxophone's not hard to anybody out there, but saxophone and clarinet are some of the instruments that once you get a sound on them, they're the easiest to start hitting like the right notes, and you can play with a loud, like proud sound. Like they know, like, I got the right notes and I'm playing it because I know I am right and I'm doing it. Yeah. When you put that next to the horn players that are having to deal with hitting these super small targets and still figuring out how to maneuver around the instrument, I've seen that hurt some people's self-esteem before. Don't let that be you. Or just, if that is you in the future, remember my words from this video. That is completely normal. Know that the way their instrument is built is different than yours, and you have this difficulty now, but very soon in the future, with time and practice, but soon, it will get better. And the people who seem like they have it easy now, they have their own difficulties of things that they have to learn coming in the future. So just remember that. This is a smaller con, but one I want to include because I want to be as transparent as possible with this. It is about cases. If you're a walker or a bus rider, this is really for you. This is something that's gonna matter for you, and not so much maybe a car rider or somebody like that. The case is large and kind of awkward. It's lopsided. The biggest part of it is in the front, and like when you walk with it and you're carrying it, it tends to hit your knees and your shin. If you have to walk like 3 miles to your house, it might be something to consider. I have also heard if you're a bus rider, apparently some bus drivers like just don't let extra stuff like that on the bus. So if this is something that might mess it up for you, think about it. So that's pretty much my list for cons. Those are all the things I can think about that were really worth talking to you when it comes to picking an instrument. So with all that said, I do not want to convince anybody out of horn because of difficulty. I'm just trying to be real with you, and I'm trying to be as honest as possible with this. But I do honestly believe that anybody can do anything they put their minds to. So with that, we'll go to the pros. So, my first pro, it is so pretty. I fell in love with the horn in high school because of how pretty it was. I was actually a percussionist, and then I switched later on in high school. Very long story, but I ended up switching later on in high school. I feel like I would have picked horn in middle school. I just didn't really know what the instruments sounded like. I had no idea what they were capable of doing, what music sounded like when you came together as a band or an orchestra. I just didn't know anything about the music world when I was in middle school. I was never exposed to it. The best advice I can recommend for you picking your instrument, the thing you are going to want to play, is to listen to soundtracks. That is where I fell in love with the horn sound. Listen to your favorite movie soundtracks and video game soundtracks, or TV show, anything that has music involved. Listen to it and see what instrument sticks out to you. If you hear a part where you're like, I really like this, and even if you don't know what instrument it is, take it to your music teacher, to your band director, and they will certainly know what it is and maybe can make that happen for you where you can start learning it. Another thing you can do is just Google the instrument. Like, you can go on YouTube and be like, oboe solo, or like saxophone solo, and a bunch of stuff will come up and you can hear what the instrument sounds like. I also love the horn because it is so versatile. It can play the most beautiful melodies you've ever heard in your life, like makes me want to cry, gives me goosebumps pretty. But at the same time, horn is also this like in your face, like at that big fight scene at the end of a Marvel movie or something. It's probably the horns and the trombones that are like pounding it down. And I love that horn can do both of those. Love it. Another pro for the horn is scholarship potential, especially if music is going to be something you eventually do in college, either as a major or a minor. The horn is considered one of the scholarship instruments, along with like oboe and bassoon and maybe one or two others, and it's because of how difficult it is to play. If you're good at your instrument and you go on audition at a college, they are more likely to give those more difficult instruments scholarship money because they know how hard it is to find somebody that's good at those instruments. Every college is also going to be a little different. It's not like they hand out money willy-nilly just because you played this instrument in high school. Most of the time they give it to you because they want you to continue playing it in college. So most of the time as a minor or a major of music. However, I have heard of some schools doing it for marching band. So if you want to major in like biology but play trumpet in your marching band, that's an option for you. And horn tends to be one of those that they're more likely to give you money for. Okay, another pro, this is something I wish I was talked about whenever I was younger, is gigs and the kind of ensembles that horns can play in. So there are different kinds of common ensembles. Like you're in band, so you play wind instruments. There's no strings like violin or cello or viola. Those don't exist in band. That's an orchestra class. And then some other common ensembles are like brass quintet or woodwind quintet. Those are very common ensembles that if you Googled them, there is a ton of music written for them because they are like well-established formats almost of music, right? Horn is played in bands and orchestras. Horn is the only instrument played in both brass and woodwind quintets, which is super exciting. I love that I get to play in both of them because they're very different. They play different kinds of music. But because of this, you play so much more music, like different kinds of music than the other instruments get to play. Just keep this in mind whenever you're picking an instrument. If you want to be able to play all kinds of music, or if you're in love with like film scores and you know you eventually want to play your instrument in an orchestra, maybe do some of that research before you pick it. But on the bright side, horn is in so many ensembles. The horn will give you great opportunities to play good music in a lot of different ensembles with a lot of different people, and maybe even get you some money. And now I have some smaller pros I would also like to include. When you play horn, you have the one-time purchase of a mouthpiece. It's the little thing that I play, and if you see any of my other videos or watch any other horn player, it's this little silver doodad that you stick in the instrument, and it's what I put my mouth on to play. They can be kind of expensive at first. The one you'll probably start off with will be anywhere from like $40 to $50-ish. They can get more expensive, but that's like a good ballpark. On the bright side, it's a one-time purchase. You buy it once and then you're basically done unless you want to upgrade, but that's up to you. This is in contrast to what some woodwind players have to do and buy reeds. If you're on an instrument that plays with reeds, you have to constantly have them and get new ones. As you play on a reed, within a matter of weeks they go bad or they break. Long term that can add up, whereas I bought the mouthpiece I play 2 years ago now. Let me tell you what, I'm sticking with that thing for a while. I love it. So that was like a one-time thing and now I'm good. Another pro to not having reeds is that reeds can be temperamental. Sometimes reeds are affected by the weather, like if it rained outside, or if a cold front suddenly came through and the temperature dropped, or sometimes maybe you accidentally tripped your reed right before an audition. It is something that I've seen my woodwind friends worry about before, and I definitely thank my lucky stars that I don't have to worry about reeds. Because although those instruments are beautiful, man, I would be scared before some auditions if it rained the night before and I didn't know how my reed was gonna do. That's just, I don't want to play that game. So now, just a couple of sort of tips if you're thinking about picking horn. If you have previous music experience, horn is gonna be so much easier for you. If you know how to read music or have a good ear, like if you know how to tell if a note is higher or lower than another note, you're good to go. Horn is all about having a good ear so that it's easier to hit those smaller targets I was talking about before. If you can hear what you want to play, it becomes so much easier to actually do it. So if you have that sort of experience, you might want to pick horn. It might not be nearly as hard as what some people are making it out to be for you. And another tip I can give is if you can take lessons on any instrument, really. If you can find a good teacher in your area that you can sit down with and have a 30-minute lesson, or even better, an hour lesson, that is going to make your playing just completely skyrocket. It'll turn you into a completely different player. You will get so much more information for your specific instrument that will help you improve so much faster than a lot of the other students around you, especially those who aren't taking lessons. So with that, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Hopefully this helped. I hope you feel whether or not you know if horn is going to be a good fit for you as a person or not. If you have any more questions for me, you can let me know in the comments below, or I've been getting a lot of messages on Instagram about this sort of thing. Any way you want to contact me and I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and leave a like down below. And if you are one of those people that is starting out band for the first time, I wish you the best of luck. You're about to enter, just one of the greatest families that you could be a part of. I think around the country, everybody that's been in a band program knows that the camaraderie is just unlike anything that you will experience elsewhere. So you're in for a treat. I think you're gonna enjoy it. And no matter what instrument you play, I wish you the best of luck. And I think that's really all I have to say. So I guess I will see you in the next video. Bye!